where you want it to be like playing live, like what's the, but you also want to do some audio processing. How fast is the feedback?
Okay, so question is for if you want to do some audio processing and live playback, what kind of time, what kind of latency do you get? And the audio unit stuff and the audio queue stuff lets you specify your buffer size. And if you think about how these things are processed, so you have to fill a buffer before you can pass it to the queue, right? So, and you only have to be one buffer behind at a time. I mean, so as long as you have another buffer there by the time that the first one's done playing, you're fine. So if you take, on the Mac, it's pretty standard for people to use 512 samples in a buffer, which at 44.1, I think, 44.1 kilohertz is about 11 milliseconds. So if you have, if you use a small buffer size like that, which is a reasonable buffer size, you're looking at 10, 11 milliseconds for latency. So 10, 11 milliseconds is in the range of not noticeable. When you start going up to 20, 25 milliseconds, people can tell. Like it just sounds a little bit off, right? If you think about video, right? If audio is off by a frame, people can usually tell a little bit. If it's off by 2, 3 frames, now we're talking 90 milliseconds, and it just looks wrong. So video playback. Lots of reasons you might want to play video in your app, right? You may want to provide a cutscene for an animation. There's a game called Crash Race Car or something like that, where when you finish the race, it'll pan the OpenGL over to a specific view and then show an actual video animation that it created that seamlessly transitions to the menu or to the next scene. You can stream content from websites. So let's say you're making the Olympics app, and you want to stream video that's on your website. You can do that. Or you may want to play local movies, right? So yeah, that's pretty self-explanatory. A few restrictions on the video, right? The video on an iPhone is not embedded in a view. Every time you play a video, it's full screen. And there's a reason why they did that, right? If you look at the iPhone, right, you're all familiar with it, we're talking 2.5-inch screen here. If you had to, if the video is embedded in some other view, it's so small you can't even see it. So every time you play video, it's full screen. You have some options for how it's scaled. You can tell it to fit the aspect ratio, or you can tell it to fill. And you have some controls that you can optionally show if you wanted to, like volume controls and transport controls. And these may have expanded since that was true in 2.0. I don't know if 3.0 is any different, but it supports .mov, which are QuickTime format, .mp4, .m4v, and 3GP. Right? So those are your video formats. Here's your controller. So when you want to say play a video, this is your interface for it, MP Movie Player Controller. You initialize it with a URL. You can tell it to play and stop, and you have a few different properties. You can have the background color. So if your video doesn't fill the screen, you can tell it to fill the rest with blue if you wanted to. Scaling mode, right? That's the aspect, fit or fill. And the movie control mode, which is, there are only 3 choices. There's no controls, there's volume only, and there's volume and transport controls. So if you want to allow people to seek, you would say, the default. And if you're streaming and the user can't seek, then volume only. And there's notifications that you can respond to. You can know when a movie's about to start playing, when it's done. You can know when the user changed the scaling as well. So a quick demo. So let's go back to our app here. All right, and here I have just 2 buttons this time, play with controls and play without controls. Let's look at the code for that. So I have 2 IB actions down here. One is the play video with controls, which then calls into another function, which we'll look at in a moment, right? Which just says yes to show controls. And it loads, this is actually a website, right? CS193P Stanford add. Ooh, is that up? Okay. And then play video without controls is a local movie that it's going to play. So we're going to say yes or no for the controls. But let's look at this play video with URL. So if we haven't already allocated a player, we're going to allocate the player and init with URL, which is the URL that gets passed in. We're going to listen for notifications for did finish playing, and I'll show you that in a moment. And we'll just set a couple properties here. If controls is off, then we're going to tell the scaling mode to aspect fill, which is, let's say you've got a cinema-wide movie. Aspect fill will say fill the entire screen, don't show any of the black bars. Versus aspect fit would say fit it in so you can see everything. And the movie control mode in this case, so if no controls, then it's going to be hidden. And if not, we're going to go with the defaults. And the defaults are the controls are there, and the scaling mode is fit, aspect fit. Now let's look at the callback. So when the movie's done playing, actually all we're going to do here is remove the observer, but of course, good citizens, we're going to call player release. All right, so let's go to the video tab. And let's start with play without controls. What you're going to see here is, because it's full screen and most video is landscape, we're actually going to see the simulator rotate. So there it is. Right, let's do it again. And I can click on it. Nothing happens, nothing comes up. Okay. Now, this one I'm wondering, I may have a problem with because the internet connection, but if I say play with controls, see if it works. It's trying to load it, can't find it. So let's actually, let's just use the same URL that we had for the local one. Right. So we're going to play this again. This one's going to have controls. Let's go to our video tab, play with controls. And this one here has, when I click, the controls come up and they go away. I can scrub, right? I can pause. I can hit next and previous, though this isn't really going to do anything for us because it just ends the movie. If I hit back, it would just scrub to the beginning. Actually, it stops it as well. So that's video playback. It's pretty simple. There's really, really actually not that much you can do with it. But there is something else you can do with video, which was new to 3.0, and that's video editing. If you look at the iPhone's Photos app, you can toggle, if you're running a 3GS or later, I believe, you can actually toggle the camera to be a video camera instead of a still camera. And if you do that, once you've recorded your clip, it'll actually give you this touch API for trimming your clips. Pretty cool. It means you're out water skiing and you're filming your friend and they take a spill and you want to post it on YouTube. Right there, as you're filming it, you can trim it back to just the spill and post that online. So API for this is pretty simple. So why would you do it? Well, maybe you want to post to YouTube, right? Maybe you want people to be able to record and post. Or maybe you want to make a video editor. And I haven't seen anybody do a good job. I have heard there's a video editor that's pretty cool. I haven't played with it yet. But they're using this API. And so you use as Josh mentioned last week, we talked about last week, the image picker controller. So you can throw up the camera, and the camera, like the still camera and the video camera APIs are actually identical. I believe there's a flag on the image picker controller to say whether or not it should be video or not. So you record with the image picker controller, and the formats that it can output are the same as playback. So MP4, M4V, etc. Here are your APIs. So you can ask the video controller if it can edit a video at path, right? So let's say you have some video that's, and I don't know, maybe there's some formats it can't support. I'm not sure why this would return no. But you can ask the video editor if it's able to edit a video. Then you can instantiate one.